Well, good morning. An unsurpassed, penetrating, and perfect Dharma is rarely met with, even in 100,000 million kalpas. Having it to see and listen to remember and accept, I vow to taste the truth of the Tathagata's words. So thank you all for coming today, and thank you for the privilege of being able to talk with you. Hi, Elizabeth. We have one Zoom person. So the invitation was to talk on the topic of opening to joy. In 2016, I had the good fortune of traveling to Japan, and the trip was led by two great practitioners and Dharma friends, Myoshin Kate McCandless and Shinmun Michael Newton, the guiding teachers at Mountain Rain in Vancouver, and we're happy to have two of our practitioners from Dharma Rain here today, and I think we'll see another one later, so welcome. Kate and Michael met as grad students in Asian studies while living in Kyoto, so they were very familiar both with the language and with the area. And they led two trips for practitioners prior to our trip. Their fluency in the language and their familiarity with Soto practice and our lineage through Shunryo Suzuki Roshi allowed us a 5-day stay at Rinso Inn, the home temple. And that home temple was also visited in April by our group from Red Cedar. Suzuki Roshi's son, Hoitsu, also known as Hojo-san, was in residence along with his wife, their son, and his family. And we were able to have a short sesshin there. On the last day, Hoitsu gave us a Dharma talk, mostly translated by Michael. He suggested that we might want to know what it was like to grow up with Suzuki Roshi for a father. In addition to the good things, he told us the unvarnished version. And it included Suzuki Roshi's realization that they were quite a bit alike. And he didn't want his son to be burdened by his own shortcomings. Forgetfulness was one of the things. And it must have been excruciating for a father to see a son walking into some of the habits that had been problematic for him. So one day, Hoitsu was leaving for school, and it was noticed that he'd forgotten his books and his schoolwork. So his dad threw him into the pond. Anger was an issue. At a later time, a troubled townsperson who had shown violent tendencies and mental health issues was allowed to keep returning to the temple out of compassion and kindness. And one day that person attacked and killed Suzuki Roshi's mother. I'm sorry, Suzuki Roshi's wife, Hoitsu's mother. Later, when Suzuki Roshi had gone to San Francisco, his earnings at the local temple were bare bones, just enough to survive in the city, and he was unable to send money back to Japan for Huitzu to attend college as had been planned. It was through the generosity of a grandmother that he was finally able to attend. We listened, rapt, as we envisioned this crazy life of tears, which is a part of the title of Norman's reflections on his trip to Japan and his relationship with Huitzu. After closing his statement, or in closing, his statement was this, and he said it in English. And so I must tell you, practice with joy. I've never forgotten that. And the friends I traveled with didn't forget it either. I open with this story because I feel there are many people who come to practice carrying a great deal of sorrow, of perhaps depression, of childhood trauma. And the notion of joy is not near at hand. James Baraz, a founding teacher at Spirit Rock, an Insight Buddhist center in Marin County, California, authored a book called Awakening Joy. In it, he references the amygdala, which is a portion of our brain that is scanning the horizon always for what could go wrong. He suggests that the brain is like Teflon for positive experiences and like Velcro for the negative. Stress increases this tendency, and also confirmation bias, if you are familiar with that term. It's a tendency to interpret new evidence as confirmation of one's existing beliefs or theories. So our brain picks up everything we have in that belief system, and through repetition shapes the lens that we look through. Are we condemned? I should tell you the full title of Norman's aforementioned book, which was in fact a direct quote from a Dharma talk that he heard from Huitzu. The full title is Escape This Crazy Life of Tears. After all, he is a Buddhist teacher. Where would he derive wisdom? We might look to the Four Noble Truths, one of the foundations of our practice. There is suffering. The cause is perpetuation through repetition of the same actions. 3, there is a way out. And 4 is the Eightfold Path. Practicing the Eightfold Path, as Desiree so kindly taught us while she was Shuso, is to look for right view, right intent, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. A main practice in awakening joy is to keep looking for the good. In the Platform Sutra, Huineng, the 6th Chinese ancestor, teaches that Nirmanakaya, as we chanted this morning at breakfast, is the transformation body. If we can skew toward the positive, we can absorb it and perhaps transform. We also need to come to terms with the First Noble Truth. Yeah, there is suffering. Nobody here has been immune to that. And yet, the Buddha was known as the happy one. The Dalai Lama has said, the purpose of life is to be happy. As young critical thinkers, we are taught to cast a skeptical eye on whatever we confront. Just plain being happy seems perhaps trivial, unconsidered, not something that I'll have in this life. But I also think about Thich Nhat Hanh, who I originally knew of as a peace activist. He was exiled from his home country, South Vietnam, in 1966 during what is known there as the American War, for refusing to take sides. He saw awful things, monks setting themselves on fire, napalm, Agent Orange, ground combat, and yet his gentle message was always love, peace. So how do you do that when you have seen a crazy life of tears? And then there's Eihei Dogen, our favorite Soto Zen messenger, who taught of the three minds: the great mind, the absolute, the grandmotherly mind or the parental mind, keeping track of the details of everyday life, and the joy mind, the joy of being alive. How can we cultivate happiness or the experience of joy? We need to understand where happiness lies and the feeling it engenders. So I would invite you to close your eyes and consider these questions. What brings you joy? How does it feel? Please, I invite you to call it out. If there's a word or if there's a phrase for what brings you joy, let us know right now. Dance.
Love.
Love. Nature.
Music.
Music. Children. Friends. Laughter.
Pottery.
Say it again.
Pottery.
Pottery.
Creation.
Creativity. For me, taking a hot shower, I lived without running water for 6 years and planted trees in camps before that. To me, to turn on a hot shower is like magic. And I can't not be incredibly grateful every time it happens. There is a relief of tension with all of these things that we all shouted out. A wave of relaxation, exaltation perhaps. What about the gladness connected to a moment of generosity? What does it feel like to give to another? Being present for it, deepening it, and being present for the moment. I'm still channeling, I'm back to channeling James Baraz here. Whatever one frequently thinks and ponders, he says, becomes the going energy. He quotes, neurons that fire together, wire together, and suggests that we turn our attention and feel positivity. We all, anybody who shouted out, maybe had a little moment. He says to just remember something, remember that feeling 6 times a day for 90 days. And 6 times a day for a total of 90 seconds. That's not too hard. 15 seconds apiece, right? And over a two-week period. you will notice a difference. You will be shifting the Teflon Velcro ratio. I was just in practice discussion before coming out, and we talked about fear as a contagious emotion. Well, well-being is also contagious. To be hopeful in bad times. In my mind, it's not a romantic thing. It's an attitude. It's an intention. It's a way of being. You know that story about the boat people in Vietnam, and they would go out in these rafts, and often the raft would get into trouble. If there was one calm person on the raft, it had a better chance of surviving. We can actually be that person if we choose. I think joy is sitting close to love, which isn't usually a big Zen term, but thanks to some of our wonderful teachers, it's been brought out more, and we've been encouraged to consider love as a vital thing in our life, and it certainly is key to well-being for me. This brings to mind one of the ancient Buddhist teachings, the Brahma Viharas. They're also known as the Four Abodes. It's actually, it's not only early Buddhist, but it's perhaps pre-Buddhist, arising out of Indian culture. And these were ascribed in early Buddhist texts as having been taught by previous incarnations of the Buddha. Then they also appear in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. If you have studied yoga, you might have come across that. Whoever gets the credit, they are an integral guideline for social relations. The four are metta, loving kindness; karuna, compassion, these are Sanskrit terms; mudita, sympathetic joy; and upekkha, equanimity. I'd like to talk about mudita, sympathetic joy, because I found it to be a pivotal part of my growth as a Zen student and as a life student. Mudita has been said to be the most challenging form of love. We talk in the Bodhisattva vow to dedicate our lives to the benefit of all beings. What often stops us is ourselves. I have many deep memories of childhood and especially adolescence where I compared myself unfavorably to many others. Awards, compliments, dating, appearance, were all funneled through my perception of my own worth. It took many years for me to come to that moment when I saw that I was genuinely joyous for another person's good fortune. It was a turning point for me. And it continues, to be, I can see myself sometimes having a thought or an attitude or a feeling, and then I go, what about mudita? True sympathetic joy. I think that the idea of appreciation, true appreciation for someone else, is a great antidote to self-preoccupation. We could lighten up. We could give the gift of joy. When I find myself in the pit of my stomach feeling anything but happiness for another person, I have to take a good look. Some years ago, a dear Sangha friend of mine decided to leave Zen and pursue Theravadan Buddhism. This happened again more recently with another close Dharma friend. I had to deeply examine my strong feelings of abandonment. It has taken authentic practice to turn this into true sympathetic joy. Joy for their practice, joy for their well-being under a different roof. There's a concept I've been very interested in known as the near enemy. For example, the near enemy of equanimity is said to be indifference. Feel how that might be in your life. The near enemy of compassion is pity. The near enemy of sympathetic joy is envy, which can easily degenerate into jealousy. We have a beautiful chant that directly relates to cultivating mudita, and that is the Metta Sutta. It arises from metta practice and is something we can add to our practice as a tool. Unfortunately, it's our noon service chant, so we'll get to do that. We have to start with ourselves, wishing ourselves safety, freedom from suffering, and love. Then we move to someone who has been important in our lives, like a teacher, and wish them the same. We move on to neutral, someone we feel neutral about, and then to a difficult individual. And finally, we offer our best wishes to all beings. If I can truly appreciate and find joy in another's good fortune, I have been able to experience mudita, sympathetic joy. So let's try it. Once again, if your eyes aren't closed, please close them. And breathe. Now, bring to mind an image of yourself and silently say, "May I appreciate my own good qualities. May I take joy in this good fortune. May it grow. May it lead to liberation." Now bring to mind someone you love, someone you care deeply about, and say, "May I appreciate that person's good qualities. May I take joy in their good fortune. May it grow. May it lead to liberation." Now just go neutral. Man on the street, woman on the street, child on the street. May I appreciate their good qualities. May I take joy in their good fortune. May it grow. May it lead to liberation. Now, if you can, bring to mind someone who you have difficulty with. May I appreciate them and their good qualities. May I take joy in their good fortune. May it grow. May it lead to liberation. And last, we can open to all beings. May I appreciate all beings' good qualities. May I take joy in the good fortune of all beings. May it grow. May it lead to liberation. Maybe give yourself a gusho. In this meditation, we are experiencing the possibility of Nirmanakaya, the transformation body of Buddhism, seated on our cushion. I love Pema Chodron. She's such a good teacher. And in her book, Welcoming the Unwelcome, she talks about the concept of bodhicitta. In Mahayana Buddhism, bodhicitta, the enlightenment mind, or the thought of awakening, is the mind that is aimed at awakening. Citta is the mind, bodhi is awakening. Again, Sanskrit. Wisdom and compassion for the benefit of all sentient beings. This state often comes unbidden in the midst of a sesshin, during a major life event. I talked recently about Gary Snyder, the poet, learning about the horror of Hiroshima and vowing to work for the rest of his life for the benefit of the well-being of other people. You might call this a teenage secular awakening. He was climbing St. Helens with Boy Scouts, which for him, not too many years later, developed into a formal Zen bodhisattva vow to bring others across before himself. So we have the awakening of bodhicitta, and that is, truly that is the practice, the awakening of a wish to practice. And that's a beginning. But Pema suggests that we go on to cultivate that awakening. What are some other ways we might cultivate the awakening of such energy? It was said before, but I find that going outside, and if possible moving, is a profound generator of joy. Breathing in fresh air, moving the body. The surprises along the way. A really interesting plant in bloom, the smell of the trees. Gazing at water. I referenced also in that same talk the idea of the blue mind, the concept that originated with the late marine biologist Wallace J. Nichols. And he is describing the phenomenon that looking at water will engender a mildly meditative state. It's inspired by water, and it takes advantage of the neurological connections formed over millennia that are still being discovered via newer technology, including EEG and MRI, where we can pick up changes in the brain based on meditation, based on engendering in the positive. Also, how's your baseline health? You may be deficient in vitamin D or in B12. You may find joy in playing an instrument, dancing, as was said before, cooking, arranging flowers, riding a bike, looking at paintings, painting, doing a sculpture. And depending on your life circumstances, you may find inspiration in the presence or the absence of other people. How might we live out that bodhisattva vow? Dogen wrote that someone working to benefit others, as I said, should maintain 3 minds, also known as magnanimous mind, parental mind, and joyful mind. I'd like to say that one person I have really learned from by her demonstration of joy is Kate. She brings joy. She appreciates the good fortune of others, no matter what may be arising for her personally. She wishes well-being for the world. May we all find joy. May we all appreciate the joy of others. How can we not, if in fact we are interbeing, connected by one body, one Buddha? Thank you for listening.